My name is Amelia Hart. I'm 35 years old. And 6 months ago, I thought I knew the shape of my life. I thought I knew the man beside me. Ryan Cole and I had been together for 4 years. Not married, but close enough that people stopped asking when and started asking why not. We shared an apartment, grocery lists, electric bills, passwords to streaming accounts, and the kind of quiet routines that make a relationship feel less like romance and more like weather. Always there. Always expected. That vacation was supposed to save us. At least, that was what I told myself when I booked the flights. We had both been working too much, talking too little, sleeping beside each other like two people waiting for permission to finally admit they were lonely. So we saved for almost a year and booked 10 days at a resort overseas. Somewhere warm and blue and expensive enough to make us believe it could fix whatever had gone cold between us. For the first 2 days, I wore the dresses Ryan used to compliment. I ordered the cocktails he liked stealing sips from. I laughed too loudly at his half-hearted jokes. I kept telling myself that distance from real life would make us remember who we used to be. Then day 3 happened. We had just come back from the beach. My skin still smelled like salt and sunscreen. Ryan had showered first, and I was sitting on the balcony, barefoot, watching the sun bleed orange across the ocean. He came out quietly and sat across from me. I knew before he spoke. There are expressions people wear when they are about to hurt you, but have already forgiven themselves for it. Ryan's face had that expression. Calm. Careful. Almost relieved. "We need to talk," he said. My stomach dropped. I looked at him and tried to smile, but it felt wrong on my face. "Okay. What's going on?" He didn't answer right away. He looked past me, toward the beach, where couples were walking hand in hand, like the world was still simple. "I met someone yesterday," he said. The air seemed to thin. I waited for him to laugh, to explain, to soften the sentence into something harmless. He didn't. "At the pool bar," he continued, "while you were napping. Her name is Claire. We talked for hours." I remember staring at his hands. He kept rubbing his thumb against his palm. A nervous habit I had seen 100 times before. Job interviews. Arguments with his father. Nights when bills were tight. But this time, the nervousness wasn't guilt. It was anticipation. "You met a woman," I said slowly. Ryan finally looked at me. And somehow, that was worse. Because his eyes weren't empty. They were alive in a way I hadn't seen in months. "I know how this sounds," he said. "Do you?" He swallowed. "I haven't felt excited in a long time. Amelia. Not about us. Not about anything. But talking to her," he paused, like even saying it out loud, moved him. I felt something again. Something inside me cracked. But quietly. Not the dramatic kind of breaking people write songs about. More like ice splitting under your feet when you're still pretending the lake is safe. "So what are you saying?" I asked. Ryan leaned back. His face had gone pale, but his voice stayed steady. "I'm saying this trip is over for us." I stared at him. He kept going. "I'm not flying home with you. Claire is staying at the resort for the week. I want to see where this goes." For a second, I didn't recognize him. This was the man who knew how I took my coffee. The man who held my hand through my grandmother's funeral. The man who once drove 40 minutes in the rain because I had a fever and wanted soup from one specific place. And now he was sitting across from me on a hotel balcony, telling me he had found a better version of his life between cocktails and pool towels. I nodded once. "Okay," I said. Ryan blinked. "That's it. What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Something. You've clearly decided." His jaw tightened. "I didn't plan this." That was the first lie I almost believed. "Maybe not," I said. "But you're choosing it." He looked wounded by that, which almost made me laugh. We're still sharing this room, he said quietly. No, I said. We're not. His eyebrows drew together. Amelia, I'm booking an earlier flight. I'll be gone tomorrow. For the first time? Uncertainty crossed his face. I think he had expected tears. Maybe yelling. Maybe some desperate speech about 4 years, and promises, and how love was supposed to mean fighting. But I had no interest in auditioning for the role of woman abandoned on a balcony. I stood up and went inside. My hands shook when I opened my laptop. I found a flight leaving the next evening. It cost more than I wanted to spend. But pride has a strange way of becoming practical when your heart is humiliated. The confirmation email arrived 5 minutes later. It felt less like a ticket and more like a death certificate. That night, Ryan slept on the edge of the bed like distance could make him decent. I didn't sleep at all. I watched the shadows from the palm trees move across the ceiling and listened to him breathe. By morning, he was gone. No note. No explanation. Just his side of the closet, hanging half open, and the faint smell of his cologne already fading from the room. I packed slowly because if I moved too fast, I thought I might fall apart. I folded shirts, rolled chargers, counted socks. Tiny, meaningless tasks became ropes I could hold on to. At the pool, I ordered breakfast and barely touched it. A couple beside me argued about whether they had brought enough sunscreen. The woman snapped, "You never listen." And the man said, "It's sunscreen, not a mortgage." I almost laughed. Some people still had small problems. Ryan came back late in the afternoon. He had showered somewhere else. His hair was damp, and he smelled like unfamiliar perfume beneath the soap. He changed into a linen shirt I had bought him for the trip. The one he said made him feel ridiculous when I packed it. Now apparently it suited him. He didn't ask about my flight. I didn't ask about Claire. We moved around each other in silence. Two strangers, sharing the evidence of a relationship. When my airport shuttle arrived, I left half the vacation cash on the nightstand. Not because he deserved it, because I wanted to leave clean. No begging. No revenge. No scene. At the door, I turned back once. Ryan was standing near the balcony, looking at the ocean. For one strange second, I wanted him to stop me, not because I would have stayed, because I wanted proof that leaving hurt him too. He didn't speak, so I walked out. The flight home was long and silent. The man beside me tried twice to make conversation. I pretended to sleep. In my head, I replayed 4 years like a detective searching old footage for the exact moment the crime began. When I reached our apartment, everything looked the same. That was the cruelest part. Ryan's shoes were still by the door. His coffee mug was in the sink from the morning we left. A jacket hung over the chair, like he might walk in any second and complain about the air conditioning. I sat on the couch without turning on the lights. 2 nights later, just before midnight, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then, for reasons I still can't explain, I answered. "Is this Amelia?" a man asked. His voice was rough, angry, panicked. "Yes." "Who is this?" "I'm calling about Ryan Cole." My whole body went cold. "What happened?" The man exhaled hard. "He's at the hospital. He gave them your number." I sat up straight. "Hospital? Is he hurt?" There was a pause. Then the man said, "He got into a fight with my wife." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Your wife?" "Yes," he said bitterly. "My wife." The woman he apparently didn't know was married until she showed up and found us together. The room tilted, and just like that, the vacation Ryan chose over me began to collapse. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. The words echoed through my apartment. My wife? My wife. My wife. Ryan had left me for a woman he barely knew. And now, I was learning that the woman had been married the entire time. I gripped the phone so hard, my knuckles hurt. "What exactly happened?" I finally asked. The man laughed once. It wasn't a happy sound. "Honestly, it's a mess." His voice sounded exhausted, like he'd aged 10 years in a single night. My wife found out where I was staying. She showed up at the resort. Ryan was with me when she arrived. I closed my eyes. A terrible picture began forming in my head. The expensive resort, the tropical music, the fantasy Ryan had chased, and reality crashing into it. What happened after that, I asked. My wife confronted us. The man paused. Ryan didn't take it well. I almost laughed at the understatement. The man continued. There was screaming. A lot of screaming. Then, my wife slapped him. I rubbed my forehead. Oh God. That wasn't the end of it. Of course it wasn't. Ryan completely lost control. Started throwing things. Knocked over furniture. Tried to go after my wife. Security got involved. The room felt smaller with every sentence. Police showed up. Someone called an ambulance because Ryan cut his hand on broken glass. I stared at the dark television screen across from me. A week ago, I had been planning excursions and romantic dinners. Now, I was listening to a stranger explain how my boyfriend had been arrested during an affair. He gave them my number, I asked quietly. You're listed as his emergency contact. I laughed once. The sound surprised me. Apparently I was still useful, just not useful enough to stay faithful to the man Sahil. Look, I know you probably hate him. Probably. Interesting choice of words. But he's asking for you. I didn't answer. He's crying. Still nothing. He doesn't have anybody else out here. The silence stretched. Then I asked the question that had been bothering me. Why are you calling me? The man was quiet for a moment. Then he answered honestly. Because I'm done helping him. That caught my attention. My marriage is probably over, he said. My wife is talking to a lawyer. My life is exploding. I can't keep cleaning up disasters. The irony nearly made me choke. Neither could I. Not anymore. The man continued. The hospital wants payment. The hotel wants him out. He's burned through most of his money. I looked around the apartment. Ryan and I had shared. Our apartment, not his anymore. Mine. And suddenly, something inside me hardened. Not anger. Not exactly. Clarity. He chose this. I said, I know. He ended our relationship. I know. He left me for someone he met at a pool bar. The man sighed again. I know. Then why are we even having this conversation? Silence. Long silence. Finally, he answered. Because despite everything, I think he's scared. I stared into the darkness. Months earlier, that sentence would have destroyed me. I would have booked a flight. I would have drained my savings. I would have convinced myself that love meant rescuing people from their worst decisions. But something had changed on that balcony. Something permanent. Not my problem, I said. Then, I hung up for 10 minutes. I sat motionless. The apartment was silent except for the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere. At Obagal. Normal life continued while mine felt like it had been dropped off a cliff. Then my phone rang again. Same number. I stared at it. Declined the call. Immediately it rang again. This time I answered, What? Please don't hang up. The man's voice sounded desperate. He really needs help. I laughed bitterly. He had help. What? He had someone who loved him. The words escaped before I could stop them. He threw that away. The man didn't respond, because there was nothing to say. A few seconds later, I ended the call. Then I blocked the number. For good. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. At 3 a.m, my phone vibrated. A text. Ryan. The message was enormous. No punctuation. No structure. Just panic poured onto a screen. Amelia, please answer. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Please help me. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I have nobody else. Please. 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 I read every word. Then I read it again. 4 years is a long time. Long enough that even betrayal can't completely erase compassion. Part of me imagined him, sitting alone in a hospital room, terrified, humiliated, broken. But another part remembered the look on his face when he chose someone else, The certainty, the excitement, the complete lack of concern for what it would do to me, that part was louder. I put my phone down and didn't respond. The next morning, I woke after barely 2 hours of sleep. Ryan had sent 23 more messages. I deleted them all. By noon, there were 7 missed calls from unfamiliar numbers. I blocked those too. By evening, I felt exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. Like I was carrying a weight I hadn't agreed to carry. The next few days became a strange cycle. Ryan would find a new number. Call, text, bye, apologize, promisey, cry, then repeat. One voicemail slipped through before I could block it. His voice sounded unrecognizable. Amelia. Please. He was crying. I know I don't deserve your help. True. But I don't know what to do. I deleted the message before he finished, because if I listened longer, I might weaken. And I couldn't afford weakness. Not anymore. 3 days later, curiosity got the better of me. I called the resort. After verifying my identity, they confirmed there had been an incident. They were polite, professional, careful. The kind of careful people become when they know a story is ugly. I learned Ryan had been released from custody. There were still legal issues being sorted out. He couldn't immediately leave the country. The resort had removed him from the property. He was staying somewhere cheaper. Much cheaper. Apparently paradise becomes expensive when your fantasy explodes. When the call ended, I experienced something unexpected. Relief. Then guilt. Then anger for feeling guilty. The emotions chased each other in circles. That evening, I called my best friend, Brooke. She listened, without interrupting. An impressive achievement for Brooke. When I finally finished, there was silence. Then she burst out laughing. Actual laughter. Loud laughter. The kind that forced her to catch her breath. Brooke. I'm sorry. She wasn't sorry. Amelia. This sounds like a soap opera. Thanks. No. Seriously. She laughed again. Your boyfriend leaves you for a woman he meets on vacation. Discovers she's married. Gets into a fight with her spouse. Gets arrested. And now wants you to save him. When she said it out loud, it sounded ridiculous. Because it was ridiculous. That's a terrible movie plot. Brooke said, I know. And he wants you to rescue him. Yes. She didn't hesitate. Absolutely not. I smiled despite myself. Tell me how you really feel. I'm serious. Her voice softened. Amelia. You spent 4 years loving that man. I know. You don't owe him a fifth. The words landed somewhere deep. Because they were true. I spent the rest of the evening thinking about them. You don't owe him a fifth. The next morning, another call came. This time it wasn't Ryan. It was his mother. My stomach sank immediately. She had always been kind to me. Always. And somehow that made this harder. Amelia. She said softly. I could hear tears in her voice. Please. Just one word. Please. The conversation that followed would become one of the hardest of my life. Because for the first time, I realized the consequences of Ryan's choices weren't hurting only him. They were hurting everyone around him, including people who had done nothing wrong, and that made walking away much more complicated. Please. Amelia. Ryan's mother sounded exhausted. Older. Smela. As if the last week had stolen years from her, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the coffee growing cold in front of me. She took a shaky breath. I know what he did. I didn't say anything. I know he hurt you. Still silence. And I'm ashamed of him. Those words surprised me. Most parents defended their children no matter what. Not her. Not today. He told me everything. She continued. Well, most of it. I imagine the truth is even worse. I looked out the apartment window. Rain had started falling. Thin gray lines, sliding down the glass. He's my son. She whispered. But what he did was wrong. For a moment, he felt my anger soften. Then she spoke again. He doesn't have enough money to get home. There it was. The reason for the call. He spent nearly everything. I closed my eyes. He says he can't change his flight. That's unfortunate. Amelia. No. The answer came immediately. Firm. Fine now. The line went silent. I can't help him. He says he'll pay you back. A bitter laugh escaped me. Like he paid back 4 years. Another silence. This one heavier, more painful. Finally, she sighed. I understand. And somehow, those 2 words hurt more than pleading would have. Because she really did understand. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I know. She started crying softly. Not dramatic sobs, just tired tears. The kind that come from disappointment, from realizing your child has become someone you barely recognize. When the call ended, I sat alone for a long time. Then I blocked her number too. Not because she deserved it. Because I couldn't keep leaving the door open. Every conversation pulled me backward. Every call dragged me into a disaster I didn't create. And I was tired. So incredibly tired. A week passed. Then another. Life slowly became quieter. The calls stopped. The texts stopped. The chaos faded. For the first time since the resort, I could hear my own thoughts again. That was when I started packing Ryan's things. At first, I thought it would feel satisfying. It didn't. Mostly it felt sad. Every item carried a memory. A photograph from our 2nd anniversary. A coffee mug he used every morning. Books he'd promised to finish, and never did. A faded hoodie he'd stolen from me years earlier, because it was more comfortable. I sat on the floor holding that hoodie for almost 10 minutes. The scent was gone. Just fabric now. Nothing more. I folded it carefully and placed it in a box. By the end of the weekend, the apartment looked different. Larger. Emptier. Like someone had removed a wall I hadn't realized was there. I rented extra storage space. Moved everything there. Then, I called a locksmith. The locks were changed that same afternoon. Part of me felt guilty. The other part remembered Ryan choosing another woman while we were still sharing a hotel room. The guilt disappeared quickly. 3 days later, something happened that changed everything. I received a message on social media. A woman I didn't know. At least, not personally. Her profile picture showed a woman in her 40s, standing between 2 teenage boys, smiling, happy, normal. My stomach tightened immediately. I knew who she was before opening the message. Claire's wife. Or rather, the wife of the woman Ryan had left me for. I hesitated, then opened it. The message was simple. Amelia. I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve any of this. Neither did I. I thought you should know the truth. The truth? Interesting choice of words. My pulse quickened. Then came the screenshots. Dozens of them. Message. Photos. Conversation. Evidence. And with every screenshot I opened, another piece of my relationship shattered. Because Ryan hadn't met Claire by accident. Not really. They'd been talking for weeks. Weeks. Before the vacation. Before the flights. Before the hotel reservations. Before he sat across from me, on that balcony, and pretended everything had happened suddenly. The messages stretched back more than a month. Flirting. Late-night conversations. Plans. Private jokes. Inside references. The kind of intimacy that takes time to build. I felt sick. But the worst part wasn't that. The worst part was what Ryan had told her about me. Apparently, according to him, we were already over. Not officially, just practically. He described me as controlling, cold, possessive. He claimed we were only traveling together because neither of us could get refunds. That we were basically roommates. Friends. Nothing more. I stared at the screen, unable to move, unable to breathe. The rain outside had stopped. The apartment had grown dark. Hours passed, without me noticing. All because of one realization. The balcony conversation had been a performance, not a decision. A reveal. He hadn't chosen her that day. He had chosen her weeks earlier. I was never part of the decision. I was the backup plan. The safety net. The familiar apartment waiting, if paradise didn't work out. And, suddenly, everything made sense. His confidence, his calmness, his expectation that I would still be there if things failed. I wasn't a girlfriend anymore. I was insurance. A contingency plan. A place to land. The realization hurt. But strangely, it also freed me, because it erased every remaining doubt. No more wondering if the relationship could have been saved. No more questioning whether I'd missed warning signs. No more imagining alternate outcomes. The truth was simple. Ryan had already left long before the vacation began. I closed the screenshots. Then I sat in silence. And for the first time since everything happened, I stopped missing him. 2 days later, Ryan finally returned home. I learned this at exactly 9:07 p.m. because someone started pounding on my apartment door. Hard, desperate, relentless. I froze. Then came his voice. Amelia. Another bang. Please. My stomach dropped. He sounded terrible. But he was here. And I knew immediately. This wasn't going to end quietly. Amelia. I know you're inside. The pounding continued. The neighbors would definitely hear. I walked to the door slowly. Every step felt surreal. 4 years together. Weeks of chaos. And now, this. I unlocked the deadbolt. Opened the door. But left the security chain in place. Ryan stood in the hallway. And for a second, I barely recognized him. His hair was messy. His clothes wrinkled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked thinner. Older. Like the version of himself that had boarded that vacation no longer existed. Relief flooded his face when he saw me. Thank God. I felt nothing. That realization shocked me. But it was true. Nothing. Not love. Not longing. Not even hatred. Just distance. His eyes filled with tears. Amelia. Please. I held up a hand. Your belongings are in storage. Confusion crossed his face. What? Unit 212. I'll send you the access code. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. You're kidding. No. His expression hardened. You packed everything. Yes. You changed the locks? Yes. The silence between us stretched, heavy, dangerous. Then he whispered. How could you do that? I looked at him for several seconds. A strange laugh almost escaped me. How could I do that? After everything. The question was so absurd that it barely felt real. And I knew then that the conversation, about to happen, would finally reveal who Ryan truly was. How could I do that? Ryan repeated the question, as if he genuinely expected an answer that would make sense of the disaster he had created. I stared at him through the security chain. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hallway lights buzzed softly overhead. Somewhere down the corridor, a television was playing behind a closed door. Ordinary sounds, ordinary life. And yet here we were. You left me for another woman. I finally said. Ryan looked away. It wasn't like that. I almost laughed. Those 4 words? People always use them when it's exactly like that. Really? His shoulders sagged. Amelia. I know how it looks. How it looks. My voice remained calm, which somehow seemed to bother him more than anger would have. You told her we were already broken up. His head snapped up. I watched the color drain from his face. There it was. The truth hitting him. You saw those messages. Not a question. A realization. Yes. He swallowed hard. Amelia. I can explain. No. His eyes filled with panic. Please. No. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. For weeks, I had replayed every moment of our relationship, looking for missing pieces. Now I finally had them. And they fit together perfectly. You were talking to her before we even got on the plane. Silence. You lied to her. Silence. You lied to me. More silence. You planned this. His face crumpled. I didn't think it would happen this way. The answer told me everything. Not that it wasn't true, just that he regretted the outcome. That was different. Very different. Tears began sliding down his face. I made a mistake. I folded my arms. You made hundreds of choices. Amelia. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. His eyes closed. A mistake is buying the wrong birthday gift. More tears. An affair isn't a mistake. I let the words settle. It's a decision. The hallway fell silent. For the first time since arriving, Ryan seemed to understand that this wasn't a temporary setback. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't a rough patch. This was the end. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The words sounded genuine. Maybe they were, but sincerity and consequences are not the same thing. "I know. Please give me another chance." I shook my head. "Why?" His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I love you." The answer came too quickly. Too late. And maybe that was the saddest part. I think he believed it. I think losing everything had finally forced him to appreciate what he had. But appreciation, after destruction, isn't love. It's regret. "You loved me when you thought I'd still be here," I said quietly. Ryan flinched. "You loved me when I was the safe option." His eyes widened. "You don't mean that?" "I do." I took a slow breath. "You thought you could try something exciting and come back if it failed." The silence that followed was answer enough. Because we both knew it was true. I wasn't the first choice. I was the backup plan. And once you realize that, there's no going back. "Please," he said again. The desperation in his voice was heartbreaking. 6 months earlier, it would have destroyed me. Now it only made me sad. Sad for him. Sad for us. Sad for the future we almost had. But not sad enough to change my mind. "We're done." His face collapsed. "Amelia, don't contact me again." The words came out softer than I expected, but they were firm. "Final, if you keep showing up here, I'll get a restraining order." For a second, anger flashed across his face. The first real emotion I'd seen all night. "You can't mean that." "I do. You loved me." Past tense. The words echoed in my mind. Past tense. "I did," I said. Ryan stared at me. Then something inside him finally broke. Not dramatically. Not with shouting. Not with accusations. Just quiet defeat. His shoulders slumped. The fight left his eyes. And for the first time, he looked like a man seeing reality clearly. I closed the door. Slowly. Gently. The security chain rattled. Then the lock clicked. And that was it. For 10 minutes, I heard him outside. Crying. Pleading. Apologizing. Then came anger. Accusation. Claims that I was heartless. Claims that I never really loved him. The usual things people say when consequences arrive and refuse to leave. Eventually, the hallway went quiet. And Ryan disappeared from my life. 3 months later, mutual friends filled in the gaps. He moved back in with his parents. Lost his job after failing to return from the extended trip on time. Apparently, the legal issues overseas delayed everything. His employer eventually stopped waiting. The position was gone. The affair ended immediately after the confrontation. No surprise there. Fantasy rarely survives contact with reality. As for Claire, the woman Ryan chose over me, she wasn't doing much better. The marriage she'd risked everything for collapsed. The relationship she'd imagined never existed. Last I heard, she was trying to rebuild her life too. The strange thing was that I didn't feel victorious. I didn't celebrate. I didn't enjoy their suffering. Mostly I felt relieved, because none of it belonged to me anymore. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. My own life improved. A lot. I received a promotion at work. Started going to the gym regularly. Picked up hobbies I'd abandoned years earlier. Photography, guitar, weekend road trips. Little pieces of myself I'd quietly given away during the relationship. Brooke called it my reconstruction era. She wasn't wrong. Then, about 6 weeks later, I met someone. His name was Ethan Parker. And the story of how we met was so ridiculous that nobody believes it, including me. I was working at a coffee shop one Saturday afternoon when Ethan accidentally knocked his drink directly onto my laptop. Coffee everywhere. Absolute disaster. The poor man looked horrified. "I am so sorry." I laughed. Mostly because the laptop was ancient. I think it survived worse. "No." He shook his head immediately. "I owe you a new one." "You absolutely do not." "Yes. I do." "No." "Yes." We argued for 5 straight minutes. Eventually he smiled. "Can I buy you dinner instead?" I remember blinking, then laughing. Then, saying yes, that dinner turned into another, then another, then another. What struck me wasn't how exciting Ethan was. It was how safe he felt. Not boring. Safe. There's a difference. He communicated. He listened. If something bothered him, he said it. If he was unhappy, he talked about it. No games. No secret escape plans. No strangers at pool bars. Just honesty. 6 months after the resort, I received one final email from Ryan. A long one. Thousands of words. He explained everything. How unhappy he'd been. How confused he'd felt. How therapy had helped him understand his self-destructive behavior. How deeply he regretted what happened. How he wished he could go back. How he hoped someday I could forgive him. At the end, he asked for one thing. Coffee. A conversation. Closure. I read the email twice. Then I deleted it. Not because I hated him. I didn't. Not anymore. Hatred requires emotional investment. And I was finished investing. The truth is, that closure isn't something another person gives you. It's something you create for yourself. Ryan wanted me to help him feel better. To help him carry his guilt. To help him rewrite the ending. But that wasn't my responsibility. I had already spent 4 years trying to make him happy. That chapter was over. Today, Ethan and I are planning a vacation together. Different country. Different resort. Different life. And for the first time in years, I'm excited. Not because I'm chasing fantasy, because I'm building something real. Sometimes I still think about that balcony. The sunset. The ocean. The moment Ryan expected me to fight for him. To beg? To prove how much I cared? Instead, I said one word. Okay. At the time, it felt like surrender. Now I understand it was freedom. Because you cannot make someone choose you. And you should never have to. The right person won't treat you like a backup plan. They won't keep one foot out the door. They won't gamble your future for temporary excitement. They'll choose you. Every day, not second, not eventually, first. And that's exactly what Ethan did. Exactly what I deserved. Exactly what all of us deserve. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's healing. It's moving forward. It's building a life so full that the people who broke your heart become nothing more than distant memories. I found that life, and for the first time, in a very long time, I'm genuinely happy